Let's get weird into it. Number 8. The fading misery filter. Remember that family road trip from hell? The one where the air conditioning broke in the middle of the desert. Your little brother spilled a gallon of suspiciously warm fruit punch on the upholstery, and your dad refused to listen to any music recorded after 1978? At the time, you probably swore an oath to the gods of misery that you would never, ever forget the sheer agony of that 6-hour drive. And yet, here you are, years later, telling your friends about it. And you're laughing. You remember the funny parts? Your dad's weird sing-along voice. The ridiculous roadside diner you stopped at. The oppressive heat and soul-crushing boredom have been downgraded from a felony to a misdemeanor in the court of your memory. What gives? This isn't just you being well-adjusted. This is your brain's built-in PR department working overtime, a phenomenon known as the fading affect bias. Studies have shown that for most people, the emotions tied to negative memories fade much faster than the emotions tied to positive ones. It's like your brain keeps all its happy memories in a high-definition 4K digital format, while the bad memories are stored on a dusty VHS tape that gets a little grainier every time you play it. Think of it as an evolutionary survival mechanism. If you remembered every single moment of suffering with perfect, crystal-clear clarity, every stubbed toe, every awkward social interaction, every truly terrible meal, you'd probably refuse to get out of bed. Your brain, in its infinite and slightly manipulative wisdom, knows that in order to keep you moving forward, it has to gently sand down the sharp edges of the past. It's not trying to lie to you, exactly. It's just giving your personal history a best-of edit, conveniently leaving the B-sides and disastrous live tracks on the cutting room floor. Your brain isn't a historian, it's a hype man for your own life story. Number 7. The teenage glory years. Why does the music you listened to when you were 17 feel like it was forged in the heart of a dying star by celestial beings? Why do the movies you saw and the friendships you had back then seem more potent, more real, more important than anything that's happened since? It's not because things were objectively better. It's because your brain was on drugs. Well, not literally, but it was in a very special state. This is called the reminiscence bump. Psychologists have consistently found that when they ask older adults to recall memories from their lives, they disproportionately remember events from their late adolescence and early adulthood, roughly from ages 15 to 25. It's a literal spike on the graph of your life's memories. During this period, you're experiencing a perfect storm of memory encoding magic. Everything is new. Your first car, your first real relationship, your first taste of independence, your first time realizing adults are just confused kids with back pain. Novelty supercharges memory. At the same time, this is the period when you're building your identity. The music you listened to wasn't just background noise. It was the soundtrack to you becoming you. The choices you made felt monumental because, in a way, they were. They were laying the foundation for the person you would become. So your brain, recognizing the importance of this decade-long identity crisis, basically turned on the high-resolution recording mode. Every sensory detail, every emotional high and low was saved with extra tags and metadata. Memories from your 30s and 40s? They're often filed under work stuff or trying to assemble IKEA furniture. But memories from the reminiscence bump are filed under the very fabric of my soul. So, no, that mediocre indie band you loved wasn't the second coming of the Beatles. Your brain just gave them a 5-star rating and then broke the rating system. Number 6. The cultural bouncer. Go ahead, turn on a classic rock or golden oldies radio station. What do you hear? Masterpiece after masterpiece. Every song is an anthem, a perfectly crafted piece of cultural history. Now, turn on a modern top 40 station. You might like some of it, but you'll probably hear a few songs that make you want to drive into a ditch. The obvious conclusion? They just don't make music like they used to. Except that's a complete lie. And the culprit is something called survivorship bias. You're not comparing the best of the 1970s to the entirety of the 2020s. You're comparing the survivors of the 1970s to everything being produced today. For every Led Zeppelin or Queen, there were thousands of forgotten, cringe-inducingly terrible garage bands with names like Mudflap or Gary and the Groovestones. They made albums that were listened to by 3 people and then used as coasters. Those songs died a quiet and merciful death, never to be heard again. Time is the most ruthless bouncer in the history of culture. It stands at the velvet rope of history and lets only the most iconic, memorable, or influential stuff through. The rest, the vast, sprawling majority of mediocre, uninspired, or just plain weird art, gets tossed into the alleyway of obscurity. We only remember the 1980s movies that were good enough to become classics, not the hundreds of straight-to-video disasters about killer refrigerators or sentient skateboards. We remember the fashion trends that looked cool, and conveniently forget the ones that made everyone look like they got dressed in the dark during an earthquake. So when you feel that pang of, things were better back then, you're not actually remembering the past. You're visiting a highly curated museum of the past, where all the boring and ugly exhibits have been hidden away in the basement. Number 5. The simplicity scam. Life was just simpler back then. You've heard it, you've probably said it. It's the unofficial motto of nostalgia. We look back at our childhoods in the 80s or 90s and think of a world without the crushing weight of social media notifications, 24-hour news cycles, and the existential dread of choosing which of the 47 available streaming services to watch. It felt simple. But here's the scam. The world wasn't simpler. You were. Your brain is performing a classic bait and switch. It's taking your personal lack of responsibility from that time and projecting it onto the entire era. When you were 8, your biggest concerns were whether you could trade your sandwich for a better one at lunch and finishing your homework before your favorite cartoon came on. You weren't worried about interest rates, geopolitical instability, or whether that weird noise your car is making is going to cost you $1,000. The world was full of those things, of course. There were global conflicts, economic recessions, and political scandals. You just didn't know or care about them, because your brain was busy dedicating its processing power to memorizing dinosaur names. Your memory of the past is filtered through the lens of your past self. You remember long summer days spent outside not because there was less to worry about in the world, but because you had less to worry about. The simplicity wasn't a feature of the decade, it was a feature of being a child. This is why every generation looks back and says the same thing. People who grew up in the 70s thought the 90s were a complex nightmare. People from the 50s felt the 70s were a chaotic mess. It's a repeating cycle of mistaking your own blissful ignorance for a golden age of global tranquility. The good old days weren't simpler. Your list of responsibilities was just shorter. Number 4. The vacation edit. Let's talk about that trip to the beach you took a few years ago. You remember the stunning sunset on the final night, the incredible seafood dinner you had, and that one perfect afternoon you spent reading a book by the water. In your mind, it was an idyllic, perfect vacation. But your memory is conveniently leaving some things out. It's forgetting the 3-hour traffic jam to get there. It's forgetting the sunburn that made it painful to wear a shirt. It's forgetting the overpriced tourist trap restaurant where you paid $30 for a shrimp cocktail that tasted like despair. And it's definitely forgetting that your hotel room was right next to the ice machine. This is the peak end rule in action. It's a cognitive shortcut our brains use to evaluate past experiences. Instead of calculating the average of every moment, our brain just takes a snapshot of 2 key points: the most intense moment, the peak, and the very end. The rest of the experience, whether good or bad, gets squashed down and largely ignored. A 2-week vacation filled with mild annoyances, but ending with one spectacular, unforgettable day will be remembered more fondly than a consistently pleasant 2-week vacation that ends with a delayed flight. The negative peak of the first vacation, like a terrible argument, might also color the memory, but if the end is good enough, it can often wash away a multitude of sins. Your brain isn't interested in creating a detailed, minute-by-minute documentary of your life. It's creating a movie trailer. It just wants the highlights, the biggest explosion, the most emotional kiss, and the triumphant final shot. It's an efficient system for storing information, but a terrible one for objective accuracy. It means that your entire perception of a past event can be hijacked by a single, powerful moment, making you believe the good old days were wall-to-wall fun, when in reality, they were mostly just days. Number 3. The echo chamber of yesterday. Ever seen one of those memes on social media? A picture of kids playing outside with a garden hose captioned, "This was our iPad. Kids these days will never know." The comments section is a tidal wave of agreement. So true. We had real fun. Best generation. I pity today's youth. What you're witnessing is not just nostalgia, but the active cultivation of it. This is confirmation bias. The tendency to search for, interpret, and recall information in a way that confirms your pre-existing beliefs. Once your brain gets the idea that the past was better, it puts on a special pair of glasses that filters reality to prove that point. You start actively seeking out evidence. You follow social media accounts dedicated to 90s nostalgia. You share articles about how modern music is terrible. You conveniently forget the hours you spent as a kid being mind-numbingly bored, staring at a wall, and instead remember only the bike rides and fort building. Meanwhile, you ignore any evidence to the contrary. You overlook the fact that today's kids have access to more information than any generation in history, can connect with people across the globe, and have incredible tools for creativity at their fingertips. That doesn't fit the "things are worse now" narrative, so your brain just deletes it. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. The more you believe the past was superior, the more you look for proof. The more proof you find, or manufacture, the stronger your belief becomes. You're essentially building your own personal good old days echo chamber, where every memory and every shared meme reinforces the central lie. You're not just remembering a golden age, you're actively choosing to build one out of cherry-picked memories and half-truths, all to prove a point that was never true in the first place. Number 2. The misery justification. Sometimes, our nostalgia isn't for things that were genuinely good, but for things that were genuinely hard. People will talk wistfully about their first terrible apartment with the leaky ceiling and no heat, or their grueling first job where they worked 80 hours a week for pennies. They'll say things like, "It was tough, but it built character." Were those days really good? Or is your brain just trying to make you feel better about having survived them? This is the work of cognitive dissonance, a deep-seated discomfort we feel when we hold two conflicting beliefs. In this case, the two beliefs are: 1. I went through a difficult, unpleasant, and painful experience. And 2. I am a smart, capable person who makes good choices. These two ideas don't sit well together. To resolve the conflict, your brain has to change one of them. It's hard to change the fact that the experience happened, so it's much easier to change your perception of it. Your brain starts to rationalize. Sure, that job was awful, but the struggle taught me discipline. Yes, that apartment was a freezing shoebox, but it taught me to be resourceful and appreciate what I have now. Your mind retroactively assigns meaning and value to suffering, because the alternative, admitting that you wasted time in a miserable, pointless situation, is too uncomfortable to accept. It reframes the hardship as a necessary and even positive chapter in your life's story. It wasn't just a bad time. It was a crucible that forged you into the magnificent person you are today. This isn't your brain remembering the good old days. It's your brain performing psychological alchemy, trying to turn the lead of past misery into the gold of a triumphant personal narrative. Number 1. The apocalypse obsession. So, we have all these individual biases working together. The fading misery, the teenage glory years, the survivorship of culture, the illusion of simplicity, all convincing you on a personal level that your past was a sun-drenched paradise compared to the grim, complicated present. But what happens when an entire society does this at once? You get declinism. This is the macro-level societal version of rosy retrospection. It's the pervasive belief that a society, a nation, or even the world at large is in a state of irreversible decline. And it is one of the most persistent and historically incorrect ideas humanity has ever had. Every single generation has been convinced that the next one is lazy, disrespectful, and leading civilization straight off a cliff. The ancient Greeks complained about it. Roman senators wrote endlessly about the decline of morality. Medieval scholars were certain the end was nigh. In the 1950s, people fretted that rock and roll was destroying the youth. In the 90s, it was video games. Today, it's smartphones and TikTok. The specific boogeyman changes, but the song remains the same. Things were better, more wholesome, and more meaningful back in my day. Declinism is the ultimate trick our brains play on us. It takes all those personal memory biases and projects them onto the entire world. We mistake our own aging and loss of youthful energy for a societal decay. We mistake the curation of past culture for genuine artistic superiority. We mistake our childhood ignorance for a simpler time. It's a collective delusion, a shared cultural myth that we are living in the twilight of a golden age that never actually existed. The good old days are a beautiful, comforting lie, a story our brains tell us to make sense of a complicated present and an uncertain future. But it's a story, not history. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.